and welcome back to Decisive Squirrel Homestead. It is now January 1st, 2022, and we are finally going to get winter. We have been breaking all sorts of high temperature and low temperature records lately. It's been 80 to 85 around here. It is finally going to freeze tonight, and it's going to be a hard freeze. We're going to drop about 60 degrees all in one night. So there are some garden things that need to be done. I figured it was a good time to do a quick update and take care of those. So this big blank spot here is where most of the squash used to be. There was some other squash on the other end of the garden. Those have been pulled out. The last squash and zucchini were harvested, and those were all put in the freeze dryer. The squash plants did really well since it's been so warm, even though technically it was out of season. But it was starting to get powdery mildew. There were a few squash vine borers in it, and it wasn't going to survive this freeze that's coming. So it was time to pull all of those out and get that out of the garden. Because they did have powdery mildew, we bagged those up and trashed them. They did not go in the compost. Over here, our tomato plant that we did not plant has two big tomatoes on it, but obviously this is not going to, oh, wait, nope, there's more than two tomatoes on here. They've set all sorts of fruit. Obviously this is not going to survive the freeze either. I might pull the biggest tomato and let it ripen inside. The others, we'll just see what happens. Our broccoli started to go to flower. It's easier to see on this row. So broccoli heads, if you leave them and don't harvest them, they do put out flowers. Each of those little green florets turns into a flower. That's how you get broccoli seed. But you can see, I think our bees are all over this. Bees love broccoli. I have no idea what that's going to do to our honey, but it's food for the bees. So the ones that had flowered, we just left. And then we did pick a few that were pretty loose that we also left to flower. The rest of the broccoli, which was a lot, got harvested. And we followed the Ball complete book of home preservation instructions for that. So we brined it, blanched it, and then froze some of it. We did a freeze dryer run, a full freeze dryer full, so 4 trays in the freeze dryer, and the rest of it just frozen, just in the deep freeze. So we have probably enough broccoli for the year, and we ate a lot of broccoli. We like to do roasted broccoli. You just cut up the broccoli, put it in a Ziploc bag with some bacon and some olive oil and garlic, and then throw it on a sheet pan and roast it in the oven for a little while. It's really good. The kids love it. We probably did that 5 or 6 times over 2 weeks. So we ate a lot of broccoli. We froze a lot of broccoli. We're still going to get side shoots off of these for a while. Let me see if I can find one. Well, this one's actually starting to flower and open up, but that's a side shoot. So the main broccoli head's been harvested, but there's still a little side shoot there. So we'll still get some more broccoli, but the bulk of it has already put out and been preserved. You can see these carrots here. They're growing really well, but they're not ready to harvest yet. I am going to start clipping some of the carrot tops because our guinea pigs love those. They can't have too much, but it's a very tasty treat. It's one of their favorite things. Here's some broccoli down here where some side shoots are coming out. So even after you harvest that main head, you still get a fair bit of broccoli. The rest of this is opening up and starting to flower. Again, the bees will love it. That'll be a food source for them in the winter. Over here on the other side, our cauliflower is not doing really well. I think that's just because it's too warm. This one actually looks pretty good. So that one's got a good head going in there. And to keep cauliflower white, you do have to have it covered with the leaves. So some varieties will kind of cover itself. Sometimes you have to tie up the leaves to cover the head, but that's how you keep it white. I know there's one down here that's not looking so great. This one right here. So like as soon as it made the head, it started to open up. That's not going to be good for eating. And again, I think that's just because of the weather. It's been, like I said, in the low to mid 80s around here. Not really good cauliflower weather. Our cabbage, oops, that one's starting to open up. Cabbage is doing great. It's just that you can only eat so much cabbage, you know? We had bought different varieties, thinking that they were going to be ready at different times. That should have been what happened. Again, the weather, that's not what happened. It all came at the same time, and you can only eat so much cabbage. We will have some today for New Year's for good luck. We'll have cabbage and black-eyed peas. And I think we're going to eat some tamales. I made tamales. It's a big thing down here in Texas around Christmas time. So all of the ingredients go on sale. And we do know how to make them from scratch, so we make our own. And we have a bunch of those sitting in the freezer. So I think we'll do tamales and black-eyed peas for good luck, and cabbage for, I think it's money. I don't know. It's just tradition. You can see more bees over here in this broccoli. They are busy, busy, busy. Our Brussels sprouts are hanging out. It's too warm for them also. The hot weather makes the sprouts start to open up. I did throw down some high nitrogen fertilizer because the idea with Brussels sprouts is to get them to make more leaves. That's what the sprouts are. So hopefully that will help, and the cold weather will help. You can see on this one down here, so there were Brussels sprouts down there at the bottom, but they've started to open, and that's from the hot weather. And this is the issue we've had with Brussels sprouts for years now. We used to grow them, gosh, probably 15 years ago, and they did great. But lately we just have never had luck with actually getting the Brussels sprouts. But we had space, so we decided to try again. I think with this latest cold front, that's really gonna stick. It's really gonna be winter. We've gotten cold a few times, but then it's back to 80 within a few days. So we haven't really started winter yet at all. With this cold snap, I believe we're gonna stay in reasonably winter weather for us. Garlic over there is still doing really well. Berries along the fence, hanging out, doing their berry thing. They put out really long canes. We're just trying to keep up with the weeding over here. We probably need to put down another layer of cardboard, another layer of mulch, and keep those happy. So that's what's been going on in the main part of the garden. Our bees back there are happy, hanging out. They're all prepped for winter. And then, oh wait, strawberries. We actually got strawberries in December. That's how crazy the weather's been. Some of these strawberry plants have actually put out fruit, which is just crazy. That's not supposed to happen in December. The thyme that is planted between the strawberries is doing great. It's really happy. This one also made a whole bunch of strawberries. That's not supposed to be happening. So that is the main part of the garden. Growing really well, despite the weather working against us. Over here in our wicking beds, these first two beds are where we were growing lettuce for our guinea pigs. We cut all of that out and fed it to the chickens because it was going to freeze anyway. It wasn't going to hang around. We didn't pull the plant, we just cut it at the ground because it will come back and grow more lettuce. And that was the original idea, was to let it grow more lettuce for the guinea pigs again. But I'm thinking I might actually plant mustard greens here because I'm wanting to get enough mustard seed to make and can our own mustard. That's something that I would like to give a go. So we can plant mustard now. We can plant it anytime for the next few months. So I'm thinking I might actually turn these two beds into mustard greens. Maybe this third one too, I'm not sure. This one still has lettuce. We're still using this for guinea pigs a little bit. But again, it's gonna freeze, a hard freeze tonight. So we need to pull all this out. Probably feed the guinea pigs today and give the rest to the chickens. This fourth bed was also planted, so that is some rainbow Swiss chard in this corner. And then each other quadrant of the bed, onions is what's really planted, the long stringy plants. You can see a bunch of weeds coming up. A fair bit of those weeds are actually lettuces, but I do need to get in there and pull everything that's not an onion, only the super skinny leaves are onions. But that's to get a head start on onions. We did not plant enough onions last year. We have none preserved. We were hoping to have enough freeze-dried for the year. We only had enough to can and to eat. We had no leftovers. This bed is mostly herbs. There's a whole bunch of mint in here that will stay and come back. There's oregano back there, parsley, some lettuce that got mixed in, but mostly herbs. Over here, these are basil seeds. So it's basil that dried and went to seed, and we just leave it and let it reseed itself. And this is, I forget what it was. I figured it out the other day. I saw it somewhere. It's a type of lettuce that's just kind of gone crazy because we haven't done anything with this bed in a long time. As you can tell by the tall dandelion in there, I'm just now seeing. There is more, I think this is parsley too. Yeah, that's parsley. And then this bed is where we have had dill come up. Now, we planted dill last spring. It all died back, and we thought we were done with dill, but it came back with the weather being like it is. So we have all of these little like sprigs of dill that have shown up. There's even some outside of the bed here in the like weeds outside of the bed. Like this right here is dill. And then these ginormous plants are dill. So dill will not withstand the big freeze. It'll die back. It'll probably come back in the spring on its own, but it's going to die back when it freezes. So my last task out here in the garden before the freeze hits is to collect as much of this dill as I can and get it in the freeze dryer. And if I have extra space in the freeze dryer, I'm also going to collect some mint. The mint will come back after the freeze. It'll probably die back in the freeze, but mint takes over everything. That's why we have it over here by itself. So we'll still have the plant, but as far as leaves for tea and stuff like that, we can go ahead and pick those and freeze dry if there's any space left. But there's a lot of dill over here, so we'll see how that goes. These beds are a mess. We haven't touched these since probably early summer. There is some asparagus in here it was the first year for the asparagus to be in this bed. So we weren't harvesting from it, we were just letting it grow. And we planted some herbs and stuff around it just to use the space for the first year. The asparagus put out large fronds, pretty much like this dill. And then when those died, we cut those off. So you let it fern out like this the first year so that it builds good roots and can put out a lot of asparagus shoots the next year. So we didn't harvest any this year, but you can see that crown right there, all of those little sticks, that is asparagus. So there's a big root system under there, and hopefully we'll get more asparagus this year. We'll also plant more. And this bed's kind of a mess because it has all of the stakes that were holding down our cattle panel arches. We just set them over here. The bed was empty when we did that, and then all this still came back. So we are going to work on harvesting that. So we have, I believe it's 3 different kinds of mint in this bed. They all have a different flavor. I think we have a chocolate mint, a peppermint, and a spearmint. So I'm going to just collect a bunch of everything and we'll kind of mix it together. I've heard that the flavor is better, like it maintains its flavor better for tea and stuff when you freeze dry it. So we're going to be giving that a try. All right, so we don't use any pesticides or herbicides at all in the garden. We just work on companion planting and sharing with nature when we need to. So I'm not going to bother washing any of this. It's just going to go straight in the freeze dryer. And for this dill, I also am not going to try to strip off any leaves or anything. Like I said, I'm hoping to keep sprigs available that I can just throw in for making pickles next year. I don't know if that's going to work. I have a feeling these little thin pieces are going to break off once they're freeze dried, but I'm going to give it a try. If I need to, after they go through the freeze dryer, I'm pretty sure it's going to be pretty easy to pull these stems out. So these are just going to go on the trays. Now, if you're doing something that has a lot of moisture to it, so like when we do zucchini and squash and things like that, we're pretty careful to keep everything in one layer. It dries a lot better that way, but there's a lot of space with herbs like this, and they're pretty light. There's not a ton of moisture in here, so I'm pretty sure it's going to work fine to pile them on pretty good. I don't think I need to be super careful about how much is stacked on top of each other, as long as I'm not pressing it down. These bigger stems I got off the big plants, I am going to just cut the smaller offshoots off of these because I for sure don't want this big, huge, thick stem in anything later on. Alright, so 2 trays of dill, which is going to compress down to nothing once it's dried, but that's a lot of dill. And like I said, we'll for sure be having dill growing next year. It's a weed, dill weed, so it's going to come back. So this is just kind of an experiment and to have some put away just in case something happens and we don't have enough dill next year. So my other 2 trays, because we have the medium freeze dryer, so it holds 4. So these 2 trays, I'm going to do my mint. And for the mint, I do need it off the stems. Now they make a cool little tool for that. It's like a metal, it just looks like a metal rectangle with holes in it that you can put over the stem and strip the leaves off. But I don't have one of those. So I'm doing this by hand. And like I said over there, we had mint mixed in with lemon balm. They look really similar in the leaves, but they smell very different. So pulling these leaves off gives me a chance to double check that everything here is actually mint. Though I guess a lemon mint tea would not be too bad. The wind doesn't carry away all my herbs. See, this is lemon. We don't want lemon in there. And that one too. All right, I have filled all of my freeze dryer trays. I have my dill, on 2 trays, and then a tray of mint. And then I had 1 tray left, and there's not really a point in running the freeze dryer when it's not full. So I went out and got a tray worth of oregano. We do a lot of Tex-Mex cooking, so we use a lot of oregano. So we are going to close up the freeze dryer and I'm going to start it. It's going to ask me if it's frozen or not. It's not frozen. I've already made sure that the drain valve is closed, so we are going to start the cycle and let that go. All right, it is the next morning. It did get really cold last night. I'm checking the weather now. It is just now 32 degrees outside, and it's 11 o'clock in the morning. We got down to, I think, 26 last night. Wind chills around 12 or 13. Again, yesterday it was in the 80s, so quite a big drop for us. I'm not sure if the garden's okay or not. The Brussels sprouts are going to be fine. That's a little cold even for the broccoli and cauliflower, especially when it's been so warm. We'll see what happens. It's also going to have, we're going to have a hard freeze tonight again. So I don't know, we might put some lights out there in the garden to help keep things a little bit warm. But the herbs that I collected yesterday and put in the freeze dryer are all dry now. So our oregano's all dried out. Mint leaves, can hear that those are all dry. And then the whole reason I was actually collecting things is the dill. So I'm going to put the dill in a bag because I'm just saving that for making pickles later on. And I don't want to crush it too much, but I think I can fit it all into one bag here. It's just one big sheet of dill. We're going to have to break that into pieces. Let's see. I could easily fit all this into one bag, but I was hoping not to crush it too terribly much. I don't know if that's actually going to work or not. I don't think avoiding crushing is going to work for me. So we're just going to get all of this into one bag so that we don't waste the bag. That's one tray. It smells a lot like pickles in here right now. So there's the other bag. It needs an oxygen absorber in it, so it will stay good for a long time. And then we're going to seal this up. And that's all sealed. Now for the mint and the oregano, I'm going to put those into jars, and they're not going to hang around for a really long time. So I'm not going to put an oxygen absorber in there. I am going to vacuum the jars, which is going to make them last plenty long for what we need. So I'm going to close up my oxygen absorbers so they're good for the next time I need them. And we are going to switch out our heat sealer for a vacuum sealer. I'm going to put my oregano just in a 1/2 pint jar, and I'm going to kind of crush it as I put it in, because when I use it in soups or anything like that, that's what I'm going to want, is small little flakes. I'm not going to want to have whole leaves in there. So just as I put this in, I'm just crushing it down some. Everything is very crispy, so it crushes really easy and takes up hardly any space at all. So there's oregano in a 1/2 pint jar. And in another video, I showed how we rigged up our old food saver to vacuum seal jars. This is not the food saver that's actually meant to do this job. They sell much more expensive ones than just this little mini one. But what we did is we got the jar vacuum attachment, and then we added just a little piece of hose between the thing that actually came with the jar vacuum attachment and the food saver. So this is just aquarium hose that you would put on an aquarium pump. So it hooks onto the end here and then onto the nozzle that is creating the vacuum on the food saver. And then it works just like normal, except that you don't have a specific button for it. So you put a lid on. We do wash and reuse the lids for this. You cannot wash and reuse lids for regular canning, but just for vacuum sealing, it works fine. So I mark them that they're for vacuum sealing. The jar vacuum attachment goes on top. You connect the hose, and then instead of pushing the regular button, you have to push the inside button with your finger. When the green light turns on, that's when the food saver would normally heat seal the bag that you had in there. So that's when you stop. You pull the hose off, and then you pull the attachment off the top, and now you have a vacuumed sealed lid. This is going to stay good for quite a while, not 15 or 20 years like a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber would, but this will last for, I think, at least a year or two. We always re-vacuum the lids after we open them, so this is good for a very long time. And for my mint, I'm going to put that in a larger jar because this will probably be used for tea. So I just want to have it easier to get into. But same thing, I'm going to put all the leaves in here and kind of crush them down as I do that. And these smell just the same as they did when they were picked fresh. So I think they're gonna maintain their true flavor pretty good, better than dehydrating. So they take up a full pint jar when they're not crushed at all. And give it just a little bit of a crush. You can see I could fit that into a 1/2 pint jar also, but I want to be able to get into it easy later on. And then I'm going to vacuum seal that one. So there we go, herbs that were saved saved before the freeze came in. So we have a jar of mint, a jar of oregano, and a bag of dill that we'll be able to use for making pickles later on. And everything has been saved from the freeze. The other project that we were working on this weekend was Josh rebuilt our pantry to hold home canned foods. So we have other food storage space, but this is a nice small little closet. Home canned foods do better kept in consistent temperatures in the dark. You don't want to stack jars on top of each other. And so in normal pantry space, it doesn't really hold a lot of jars. But what he did is he came in here and took out the old shelves, which turned out to be a much bigger job than expected. The previous, whoever had put those shelves in had really overdone it. So that turned out to be quite a job. And then this is 3/4 inch plywood that he made new shelves out of and spaced them so that they will fit all of the jars without a lot of extra wasted space. So down here at the very bottom on the floor, that is 16 inches, which means that it will hold a 5-gallon bucket with a screw-on lid. So if we're storing any bulk items, we can store those down there if we want to. And then we have 3 spaces that are spaced for quart jars. Those are 8 inches tall each. And that obviously can hold quarts, but also pints or half pints if we need to. The next 3 rows are pints. Those are 6 inches apart. And then half pints are 5 inches apart. Each row is one type of food. So this row is only strawberry jam. This row is only tomato sauce. We are going to add little labels, so like those brass label holders that can go on there and you can switch out the label so we know what each thing is without having to pull jars out. But it's pretty easy to tell, like we know what we made. It's pretty easy to tell what's what. It's all in here. We don't have jars of food spread out over the house, which is how it was before. We had them in multiple different places because we didn't have space for everything. So now everything fits. There's still plenty of open space. We did most of our canning in June and it's now January. So we have been eating on this for quite a while. Next summer, when we really have everything harvested out of the garden, it's going to be much more full again. But this will hold, I think, just about everything. Like even if we put all of our empty jars in here, I think it would totally fill this up. So this is going to be much more convenient for storing our food in the future. I hope y'all are staying warm where y'all are. Have a great day.